John Adams slowly opened his eyes. The bright white lights above made him squint. His body felt heavy, weak, almost lifeless. He tried to move his fingers, but they barely twitched. Where am I? What happened? He thought, his mind still hazy. Then it all started coming back. The car, the crash, the smell of gasoline, the sharp pain before everything turned black. His ears picked up a soft beeping sound. Machines. He was in a hospital. But why did his body feel so powerless? It was as if he had been lying here for days. Just as he tried to process everything, a voice made him freeze. "Dr. James, tell me, how long will he stay like this? Will he just lie there forever?" John recognized that voice. His wife, Mary. The doctor hesitated before answering. "He has a very small chance of waking up. But miracles do happen." Mary let out a frustrated sigh. "I see. Well, keep me updated." John's heart pounded. Why did she sound disappointed? Then his world shattered. Mary's phone rang. She answered with a voice so soft, so sweet. It wasn't meant for him. "Darling, it's me. Yes, he wrote the will. Everything will go as planned." John's blood turned cold. His wife was talking about his will. She thought he was going to die. And worse, she was happy about it. His fingers curled slightly. His mind sharpened. He had no strength to fight back, not yet. So he made a choice. He would pretend to be dead. John lay still, forcing himself to breathe slow and shallow. The steady beep of the machines helped sell the illusion. He listened, his heart pounding, as Mary continued speaking on the phone. He could hear every word, every breath, every movement in the room. But he had to stay perfectly still. He couldn't let Mary know that he was awake. Not yet. The first time he heard Mary talking about a will, he had convinced himself he was overthinking things. He had been in and out of consciousness, his mind cloudy, and he told himself it must have been the coma making him imagine things. Maybe he had misheard. Maybe she wasn't actually plotting against him. But now there was no doubt. Mary sighed loudly as if she were bored. John listened carefully. Her voice changed. It became softer, sweeter, like she was speaking to someone special. "Hey, love. Yes, I'm still at the hospital." John felt his stomach drop. "Love? Yes. Everything is moving according to plan," she continued, her voice smooth. "The doctor says he won't wake up, and even if he does, he won't last long." John's hands clenched into weak fists beneath the blanket. "The will is ready," Mary said. "The moment he's gone, the dealership is mine. And after that, ours." John's body burned with anger. She wasn't just planning for his death. She was planning a life with another man. The voice on the other end of the call spoke, but John couldn't hear it clearly. Mary giggled. "Of course, Robert. You'll be running things with me. We'll turn the dealership into something bigger. No more of John's boring business style." Robert. John knew that name. Robert was his assistant manager at the dealership. He had always trusted him, always given him chances to prove himself. And now Robert was stealing his life. John fought to keep his breathing slow. His mind was racing. Mary and Robert were waiting for him to die. And if he didn't, would they try to kill him themselves? He had no time to waste. He had to act fast. But first, he needed to hear everything. John's mind drifted back to that night, the night that nearly killed him. The memory felt sharp, vivid, like it had been waiting in the shadows, ready to hit him all over again. It had been a cold evening. The dealership had just closed and John was finishing up paperwork in his office. His phone was on silent, but when he checked it, his heart nearly stopped. A text message from Mary. "John, help me. I'm stuck on the bridge. I think someone is following me. I'm scared." His chest tightened. Mary was in danger. Without a second thought, he grabbed his coat, rushed out of the dealership, and jumped into his dark green sports car. He had to get to Mary. He gripped the steering wheel, pushing the speed limit. His heart pounded. Why was she out there alone? Who was following her? The closer he got to the bridge, the worse the sandstorm became. Visibility was low, and the road was getting more dangerous. His wipers fought against the sand, but he could barely see. Then it happened. His brakes failed. He slammed his foot down. Nothing. The car kept sliding. His pulse raced. His tires lost grip. The bridge was just ahead. He had two choices: swerve into the ditch and take the impact, crash straight into another car parked on the roadside. There was no time. He turned the wheel hard. The car spun out of control. The world tilted. Then, impact. The vehicle flipped. The sound of metal crunching filled his ears. Glass shattered. A sharp pain tore through his body. Then, darkness. Everything went silent. John's mind pulled him back to the hospital room. His breathing was uneven. He could still feel the crash, the helplessness. But now something was different. He knew the truth. That night when he had crashed, Mary hadn't been on the bridge. She had been with Robert. While he was risking his life to save her, she had been spending time with another man, planning his death. John's fingers twitched. They had set him up, and he had fallen for it. Lying in the hospital bed, John's mind replayed another moment, one he had dismissed as nonsense. It had been the morning of the accident. John was at the dealership, preparing for a busy day. He was reviewing sales reports when Lisa, one of the cashiers, hesitantly approached his office. She looked worried, almost afraid. "Mr. Adams," she said softly, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "Can I talk to you for a second?" John barely looked up. "Make it quick, Lisa. I have a lot to do." Lisa swallowed hard. I had a bad dream last night." John sighed, rubbing his temples. "Lisa, I don't have time for dreams." But she didn't back down. "It was about you," she said. "I saw you in a car. There was a crash. It was bad. You didn't make it." John finally looked at her, raising an eyebrow. Lisa's hands trembled. "Please, Mr. Adams, just don't drive today. Take a day off. I can't explain it, but I know something bad is going to happen." John chuckled, shaking his head. "Lisa, I appreciate the concern, but I've been driving for over 10 years. I don't believe in bad dreams." Lisa's face fell. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. "All right," she whispered, stepping back. "I hope I'm wrong." Now, lying weak and broken in a hospital bed, John's stomach twisted. She wasn't wrong. She had seen it before it happened, and he had ignored her. If only he had listened. But there was no point in regrets now. He was still alive, and now he had a bigger problem to solve. He couldn't believe how blind he had been. While he lay weak and recovering, Mary was out there taking everything he built. He needed to know what was happening at the dealership. Meanwhile, at Adams Luxury Motors, the atmosphere had completely changed. The employees had been hopeful that John would recover, but Mary had other plans. She walked into the dealership, dressed in an expensive coat, acting as if she had been the owner all along. Her sharp heels clicked against the floor as she called for a staff meeting. The employees stood nervously as Mary faced them, arms crossed. "Listen up," she said coldly. "John is gone and I am in charge now. Things are going to change around here." The room fell silent. Lisa was standing near the back, her stomach twisting. Something about Mary's tone felt wrong. "We're done wasting money," Mary continued. "This dealership will run how I say. If you don't like it, you're free to leave." She turned her gaze toward Robert, her lover, who stood beside her with a smug look on his face. "Robert will be handling operations now," she announced. The employees exchanged nervous glances. Robert? He wasn't fit to run a dealership. John had always been fair and kind. He treated his employees like family. But Mary? She was ruthless. The first real blow came just 2 days later. Lisa was called into Mary's office. She felt a pit in her stomach. Something was wrong. She stepped inside cautiously. Robert stood next to Mary, arms crossed. Mary leaned back in John's old chair, the chair that didn't belong to her, and smiled. "Lisa," she said, "I'm afraid we have a problem." Lisa swallowed. "What problem?" Mary sighed, pretending to be concerned. "We have evidence that you've been stealing from the dealership." Lisa's heart stopped. "What?" Robert slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a fake report, listing missing funds from the register. I didn't steal anything, Lisa protested. Check the cameras. Ask the other employees. Mary simply shrugged. The decision is final. You're fired. Lisa's hands shook. You can't do this. But Robert grabbed her arm and escorted her out. The other employees watched in shock as Lisa was dragged out of the dealership. Lisa turned, tears in her eyes. She had warned John about the accident. Now she was paying the price. Back in the hospital, John had no idea what had just happened. But he could feel it. Something was very, very wrong. And he was right. Lisa was gone. His dealership was stolen. Mary and Robert were in control. But what he didn't know yet was that he was only alive because of a stranger. 3 weeks earlier, the night of the crash, the sandstorm had blinded the city. The roads were dangerous. The accident had happened so fast. John's car had skidded, flipped, and slammed into a tree. The gasoline had started leaking. Smoke rose from the hood. John was unconscious, strapped in the driver's seat. He had seconds before the car exploded. People stood at a distance, watching. But no one moved. No one dared run toward the burning car. No one. Except Tom. Tom was a homeless man, a drifter who had no place to go. He had been sheltering in an alley nearby, trying to stay warm when he heard the crash. Most people ran away from danger, but not Tom. He didn't think. He just acted. He ran through the blizzard. When he reached the wrecked car, he could smell gasoline. If he didn't act now, the whole thing would blow. Through the broken glass, he saw a man inside, unconscious, bleeding, barely breathing. John Adams. Tom took a deep breath, grabbed a heavy piece of concrete, and smashed the driver's side window. His hands were bloody from the broken glass, but he didn't stop. "Come on, man! Wake up!" Tom yelled, trying to pull John out. But John was dead weight. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger. The flames were growing. He had no time. Tom gritted his teeth, reached inside, and pulled with everything he had. He dragged John out, 10 feet away, then 20, just far enough before boom. The car exploded, sending flames into the air. Tom fell back, breathing hard. He had done it. John was alive, barely. Back to the present. Tom had disappeared after the crash. No one knew who had saved John. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not even John himself. But fate had a funny way of bringing people back together. And soon, John would meet his savior face to face. The heat was unbearable. The sun hung high in the sky, burning down on the dusty streets. Tom walked slowly, his legs weak, his body aching from the injury he had gotten that night. Ever since the explosion, he had stayed in the shadows. He hadn't expected anything in return for saving John Adams. He just did what was right. But life on the streets was unforgiving, and now he was paying the price. His vision blurred. His legs felt weak. Then, he collapsed on the side of a busy road. For a few moments he lay there, struggling to breathe, unable to move. He would have passed out completely if not for a voice. A familiar voice. "Hey, are you okay?" Through his fading vision, he saw a woman's face hovering over him. Lisa. Lisa had been walking home after being fired from the dealership. She had barely made it a block before spotting a man lying near a roadside stall. At first, she thought he was just another drunk. But when she got closer, she saw the dried blood on his forehead, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Mike!" she called out, waving toward the dealership's old janitor, who had just finished his shift and was walking nearby. "Come help me." Mike hurried over, kneeling beside the man. "This one is in bad shape," Mike muttered, looking at Tom's wounds. Lisa didn't hesitate. "We need to get him to shelter before he collapses completely." Between the two of them, they lifted Tom, supporting him as they led him to a small back room behind a shop owned by one of Mike's old friends. The heat outside was ruthless, but inside, it was cool and shaded. As Tom's breathing steadied, Lisa brought him a cup of water. "Drink," she said gently. Tom hesitated, then took a few sips. For the first time in weeks, he felt safe. But he had no idea that fate was about to bring him face to face with the man he had saved. Tom sat in the dimly lit back room, slowly sipping water. Although his body was still weak, the shade provided relief from the heat outside. Lisa and Mike sat across from him, watching curiously. "What happened to you?" Lisa finally asked. "You look like you've been through hell." Tom let out a small, tired chuckle. "You could say that," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. Mike shook his head. "That cut on your head looks bad. You're lucky Lisa found you." Tom hesitated for a moment, then sighed deeply. "I should be dead." Lisa and Mike exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. Tom leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. 3 weeks ago, I pulled a man out of a burning car." Lisa's breath hitched. "A burning car?" Tom nodded. "There was an accident, a big one. People just stood there watching, scared to come close. I ran in, smashed the window, and dragged the guy out." Mike frowned. "You mean, you saved someone's life?" Tom sighed. "Yeah. I barely made it out myself." Lisa's heart was pounding now. A burning car, a man trapped inside. A memory hit her like a punch to the chest. The accident. John Adams's accident. She grabbed Tom's arm. "The man you saved, do you remember what he looked like?" Tom gave her a tired, confused look. "I don't know, it was dark. His face was covered in blood. He was unconscious." Lisa swallowed hard. "Was it a dark green car?" Tom's eyes widened. "Yeah, how did you know?" Lisa and Mike stared at each other in shock. "Tom, you saved John Adams." Tom froze. "Who?" Lisa's voice shook. "The man you pulled out of that car was the owner of Adams Luxury Motors, my former boss." Tom stared at her, his mind racing. He had risked his life to save a man he never met. And now, Lisa was telling him who that man was. Lisa took a deep breath. "Tom, John Adams isn't dead, he's alive." Tom's heart pounded. For 3 weeks he had thought that man was gone. But now, he was alive, and he felt good. Chapter 9. The plan for revenge begins. Lisa, Mike, and Tom sat in silence, letting the weight of the revelation settle. John Adams was alive. Tom shook his head in disbelief. I thought he didn't make it. After I pulled him out, I had to run before the car exploded." Lisa's hands trembled. "No, he survived. But he has no idea what's happening right now." Mike let out a long sigh. "That means he doesn't know Mary has taken over the dealership. He doesn't know Robert is running things now." Lisa clenched her fists. "And he definitely doesn't know Mary fired me on fake charges." The room went quiet again. Then Tom spoke. "We need to find him." Lisa nodded. "Yes, but where do we even start?" Mike leaned forward. "He must still be in the hospital." "He was in a coma, right? He won't be in any shape to go anywhere." Lisa stood up, determination in her eyes. "Then we go there. We need to tell him everything." Tom hesitated. "What if Mary already got to him? What if she's making sure he doesn't wake up?" Lisa's stomach twisted. "Then we're already too late." Meanwhile, at the hospital, John couldn't wait any longer. He had heard enough. He knew what Mary was planning. She hardly came to visit him anymore, and he knew his life was in danger. But if he stayed in the hospital any longer, he would be powerless to stop it. He needed to leave, tonight. The only person he could trust was Sarah, the nurse who had been taking care of him. She had been kind, gentle, and most importantly, she had kept her mouth shut when he whispered to her, "Please don't tell anyone I'm awake." Now she stood beside his bed, a small bag in her hands. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. "You're still weak." John nodded, gripping the edge of the bed. "I don't care. If I stay here, Mary will find a way to finish what she started." Sarah sighed, but she helped him up. His body ached. His muscles were weak, but he fought through the pain. Sarah handed him a pair of men's clothes. "They belong to my brother," she said softly. "They should fit." John took them and quickly changed. He barely recognized himself in the worn-out jeans and plain shirt. Sarah handed him a walking stick. "You'll need this." He nodded. "Thank you." Then carefully they slipped out of the hospital. John's heart started beating faster as he approached his house. The home he had built, the home he had shared with Mary. He had his keys, but when he tried them in the lock, they didn't fit. His stomach twisted. She changed the locks. John clenched his jaw. Mary had wasted no time erasing him, changing his house to hers and making sure he had no desire to come back. His mind raced. He couldn't just walk away. He needed to see what was happening inside. Then luck was on his side. The gate was slightly open. Slowly, carefully, he pushed it open and stepped inside. The living room lights were on. He could hear music playing. And then, laughter. His blood ran cold. He stepped toward the window, peering inside. There, sitting on his couch, wearing his clothes, was Robert. Robert laughed, holding a glass of expensive whiskey. Across from him sat Mary, smiling, her legs wrapped around his lap. John felt like he had been punched in the stomach. His wife, his best employee, living in his house, wearing his clothes, spending his money. John's fingers tightened around the walking stick. He wanted to storm in. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, to throw Robert out of his home. But he took a deep breath. No, not yet. Mary and Robert thought he was dead or dying. He had one chance to turn the tables, and he was going to take it. John stood outside his own home, his hands clenched into fists. Sarah, who had patiently waited for him outside the house, joined him. The rage boiling inside him was unlike anything he had ever felt before. Inside, Mary and Robert laughed, drinking expensive whiskey as if they had already won. John's muscles tensed, but he forced himself to stay hidden. "I need to hear everything," he said, turning to Sarah. He needed to know just how deep the betrayal went. Inside the house, Mary leaned closer to Robert, a wide smile on her face. "Can you believe it?" she said, swirling her drink. "It's almost funny. John spent years running that dealership like a fool. Now it's finally ours." Robert chuckled. "I won't lie, babe. It was easier than I thought. Once John was out of the picture, taking over was simple." John gritted his teeth. "Out of the picture?" Mary sighed dramatically. "I just wish the accident had finished him off." John's heart stopped. Robert smirked. "Relax. He is in a coma. He won't wake up. And if he does, well, we'll deal with it." John's blood turned to ice. They wanted to finish him off. This wasn't just about the dealership. This wasn't just about greed. Mary and Robert were willing to kill him to get what they wanted. Mary set down her glass and leaned forward. "By the way, did you make sure the accident looked clean?" John froze. Robert smirked. "Of course. The brakes failed exactly when they were supposed to." John felt the air leave his lungs. They planned it. The accident wasn't just bad luck. It was a setup. Mary had sent that fake text, knowing John would rush to help her. And Robert had made sure his brakes failed at the right moment. John was never supposed to survive. His whole body shook with fury. For years he had loved Mary. He had trusted Robert. And in return, they had plotted to kill him. John took a deep breath, his fists trembling. He could walk in now. He could reveal himself, let them see the ghost they thought they buried. Or he could wait, play the game better than them, strike when they least expect it. He glanced at the street. Somewhere out there, Lisa, Mike, and Tom were looking for him. But they had no idea that he had already escaped. And they had no idea just how deep the betrayal ran. John's lips curled into a cold smile. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming next. Lisa, Mike, and Tom arrived at the hospital, their hearts pounding. They had rushed there as fast as they could, knowing that John had no idea what was happening at the dealership. Lisa ran up to the front desk. "John Adams, where is he?" The nurse looked confused. "Mr. Adams." She flipped through some papers, then frowned. "He's not here." Lisa's stomach dropped. "What do you mean he's not here?" The nurse shrugged. "He was discharged." Mike stepped forward. "Discharged? When?" The nurse glanced at the clock. "About an hour ago." Lisa's body went cold. They were too late. Meanwhile, across the city, John Adams sat in a cozy, quiet guest house. He had escaped the hospital, but now he needed to find Lisa. He needed to warn her. But he couldn't risk calling his own phone. Mary or Robert might see the call. Instead, He turned to the only person who had been by his side, Sarah, the nurse who had helped him escape. "I need to find someone," he told her. "Her name is Lisa. She worked at my dealership." Sarah nodded, already pulling out her phone. "Give me a minute." She called someone, speaking softly. After a moment, she smiled. "She's on her way." John exhaled, relief washing over him. For the first time since he woke up in that hospital bed, he felt like he wasn't alone. Lisa, Mike, and Tom arrived at the guest house within the hour. The moment Lisa stepped inside, her eyes filled with tears. "Mr. John!" John turned to face her. He looked weaker than before, but his eyes were burning with determination. Lisa rushed forward, grabbing his hands. "You're alive," she whispered. John nodded slowly. "I am." Mike stood beside them, shaking his head. "We thought we lost you, boss." John gave a tired smile. "I almost did." Then his eyes landed on Tom, the man standing awkwardly in the corner. Lisa turned to him. "John, this is Tom." John frowned slightly. "Tom?" Lisa nodded. "He's the reason you're alive." John's breath caught in his throat. He looked at Tom, really looked at him. For a moment there was silence. Then John stepped forward and grabbed Tom's hand, gripping it firmly. "You saved my life." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." John shook his head. "No, anyone else would have stood there and watched me burn. But you ran into the fire." Tom swallowed hard, his eyes darting away. John tightened his grip. "I owe you everything." Tom finally looked at him. John nodded firmly. "And I swear I will make sure you're rewarded for it." But before he could repay Tom, before he could think about anything else, there was one thing John needed to do first. He looked at Lisa, Mike, and Tom. His expression hardened. "Mary and Robert think I will die soon." His voice was steady, but there was fire behind it. Lisa clenched her fists. "They took your business, Mr. John." Mike nodded. "They're living in your house." John's jaw tightened. "Then it's time to take it all back." John sat in the dimly lit room of a cozy lodge, the only safe place he could find for now. Lisa, Mike, Tom, and Sarah sat across from him, their faces tense. For the first time since his accident, John felt something powerful return to him. Control. He was no longer the weak man lying helpless in a hospital bed. He was John Adams. And he was about to take everything back. Lisa couldn't stop staring at him. "You're really alive?" John smiled faintly. "Yeah. Thanks to all of you." His eyes shifted to Tom, the man who had risked his life to save him. "I owe you my life." His voice was firm. "If there's anything you ever need, anything, I'll make it happen." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it for a reward." John nodded. "That's exactly why you deserve one." Lisa smiled, watching the two men shake hands. Mary and Robert had no idea what was coming. They were sitting comfortably in his house, drinking his whiskey, wearing his clothes, thinking they had won. But tonight, everything would change. John and his team moved carefully. Mike used his old security access to deactivate the house alarms. Lisa distracted the gate guard with a false delivery request. Tom positioned himself near the back, in case Robert tried to run. Sarah waited outside with a car, ready for whatever happened next. John stood at the front door, his heart steady, his grip firm on his walking stick. Then he rang the doorbell. The door swung open and there stood Robert, wearing John's silk robe. At first, Robert didn't react. Then his eyes widened. His face turned pale. You're supposed to be dead," John interrupted, stepping inside without permission. "I get that a lot lately." Mary appeared from the hallway holding a glass of wine. She nearly dropped it. Her eyes darted between John and Robert, panic rising in her face. "John," her voice shook. I can explain." John raised a hand. "Don't." He walked past them, looking around the house, his house. Everything was exactly as he had left it, except now it reeked of betrayal. "You changed the locks," he mused. "Didn't take you long." Mary swallowed hard. "John, please, I made a mistake. John turned sharply, his eyes cold as steel. "A mistake?" he echoed. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is breaking a dish." He took a slow step forward. "But trying to kill your husband?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "That's not a mistake, that's murder." Mary's breath hitched. Robert stiffened. The trap was set. John turned his gaze to Robert. "You cut my brakes." Robert's face drained of color. "That's a lie." John chuckled darkly. "Is it?" He pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Robert's own voice filled the room. Of course, the brakes failed exactly when they were supposed to. Mary gasped. Robert staggered back. John had proof. "So tell me, Robert," John said, taking a slow step forward. "What's your next move?" Robert's eyes darted toward the back door, but before he could move, Tom stepped inside. "Going somewhere?" Tom asked, cracking his knuckles. Robert froze. He was trapped. Mary fell to her knees. "John, please, I was desperate. John shook his head. "You were greedy." Mary grabbed his leg, sobbing. "We can fix this. We can go back to the way things were." John looked at her with nothing but disgust. "There is no way." He stepped back, shaking her off. "Pack your things and get out." Mary's face twisted. "John, please. Now." His voice was final. Mary burst into tears, but she knew it was over. She stumbled upstairs to grab her things. Robert, still frozen in place, turned back to John. His fear had turned to anger. "You think you've won?" Robert sneered. "You're weak, John. You're nothing without me." John let out a cold laugh. Robert's fists clenched. "You don't deserve that dealership. I was the one keeping things running." John tilted his head. "Oh, you mean the dealership that's drowning in debt now? The one that's lost half its customers in the last 3 weeks?" Robert's mouth snapped shut. John stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think I don't know what you've done? You're finished, Robert." Robert shoved past him, storming toward the door. "You'll regret this." John smiled. "Not as much as you will." Robert turned, opened his mouth to say something, but one look at Tom and he shut it again. Then he disappeared into the night. John exhaled. He had taken back his home. But this wasn't the end. There was one last battle left to fight. The house was quiet now. For the first time in weeks, John Adams stood in his own home, free from the presence of traitors. Mary and Robert had stolen from him, betrayed him, and tried to kill him. And now, it was time for them to pay. John pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. A deep voice answered. "Detective Coma speaking." John didn't waste time. "I have information about a fraud case you closed 3 years ago. I believe you need to reopen it." There was a brief pause. "And who am I speaking with?" John's voice was firm. "John Adams." He laid it all out. How Mary had manipulated him. How she had forged documents. How she had stolen money before and gotten away with it. But this time, he had proof. Lisa and Mike had kept records of suspicious transactions at the dealership. Tom had overheard conversations that linked Mary to past schemes. And now, with the attempted murder tied to her name, there was no escaping justice. John hung up the phone. The police were on their way. It was finally over. Mary had been silent upstairs, gathering her things. Too silent. John turned just in time to see her charging toward him, a heavy glass vase in her hands. Her face was twisted in rage. "You ruined everything!" She swung the vase straight for his head. Before she could make contact, Sarah stepped in. With one swift move, she grabbed Mary's wrist, twisting it back. The vase slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Mary let out a sharp cry, falling to her knees. Sarah glared down at her. "You're done." The sound of sirens filled the air. Moments later, 2 police vehicles pulled up outside. Detective Coma and his officers stepped inside, taking in the scene. John stood tall, unshaken. "She tried to kill me, and I have evidence she's been involved in fraud for years." The officers moved fast. Robert, who had nowhere to run, was pulled out of his car and handcuffed on the spot. Mary screamed and fought, but 2 officers restrained her, pinning her arms behind her back. Her eyes locked onto John, pure hatred burning in them. "You think this is over?" she spat. "You'll regret this, John, I swear." John stepped forward, staring down at her with nothing but cold indifference. "The only thing I regret," he said, "is not seeing through you sooner." Mary thrashed as she was dragged outside, her screams fading as they shoved her into the police car. Robert was already inside, his face pale, his shoulders slumped. He had no fight left in him. The doors slammed shut, the cars drove away. And just like that, it was over. John stood by the door watching the dust settle. Lisa, Mike, Tom, and Sarah stood beside him. They had fought for this, together. John took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. The storm had passed. John Adams had taken back his life, his home, and his future. Now it was time to rebuild. The next morning, John walked into Adams Luxury Motors for the first time since the accident. The employees gasped as they saw him, some in shock, some in relief. They had all heard the rumors. But here he was, stronger than ever. John stepped onto the dealership floor, looking around at what was left of his business. It had been damaged under Robert's leadership. Morale was low, finances were a mess, and customer trust had been shattered. It was time for change, and John knew exactly where to start. John stood in front of his employees and cleared his throat. Things are going to be different now. Everyone watched him closely. John turned to Lisa. "Lisa, you were loyal to this company, even when it turned against you. You warned me, you tried to help, and you never gave up. From today forward, you're no longer just a cashier. You're my new head of customer relations." Lisa's eyes widened. "Mr. Adams." John smiled. "You deserve it." Lisa wiped away a tear and nodded. "Thank you." John then turned to Mike, the janitor. "Mike, you've been here longer than anyone. You know this place inside and out. You stood by me even when I wasn't around to see it. I want you to be the new operations manager." Mike chuckled in disbelief. "John, I clean floors. I'm not a manager." John smiled. "You are now." The room erupted into applause, but there was one more promotion left. John turned to Tom, the man who had saved his life. "Tom, I don't know much about you, but what I do know is that you're brave, selfless, and someone I can trust. If you want it, I'd like you to be part of the executive team, handling security and logistics for the dealership." Tom blinked. "An executive?" John nodded. "It's the least I can do." Tom swallowed hard, then shook John's hand. "I won't let you down." The dealership was in good hands now. That evening, he drove to the hospital, not as a patient this time, but as a man with something to say. Sarah was just finishing her shift when she saw him standing near the entrance. She smiled softly. "You look better." John took a deep breath. "Because of you." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" John chuckled, shaking his head. "Sarah, you helped me when no one else did. You trusted me when you didn't have to. You risked your job to keep me safe." She folded her arms. "Are you saying thank you or something else?" John exhaled, looking at her directly. "I'm saying I care about you more than I even realized." Sarah's expression softened. She took a step closer. "So what now?" John smiled. "That depends. Are you free for dinner?" Sarah laughed, shaking her head. "John Adams, are you asking me on a date?" John grinned. Yes, I am." Sarah smirked. "Well, it's about time." They walked off together, a new chapter just beginning. John Adams lost everything. But in the end, he gained more than he ever expected. True friends, loyal people by his side, and a woman who truly cared for him. And as he drove away from the hospital, he knew one thing for sure: the best was yet to come.